Man, I've got to say, this past weekend in NASCAR really stuck with me in a way that doesn't happen often. It's one of those weekends that keeps replaying in your head long after the checkered flag has waved. You find yourself going over every moment again and again because something took place on the track that has the potential to completely shift the trajectory of a driver's entire season. And as if that wasn't enough, we're heading into one of those unusual, offbeat stretches of the NASCAR calendar that just feels different from the usual rhythm. What makes the whole situation even more intense is that we're not talking about just one major headline. There are actually two massive stories dominating the conversation right now, and they couldn't feel more different from each other. One is raw, emotional, and fiery, the kind of moment that gets fans arguing passionately and has everyone rewatching the footage over and over. The other runs much deeper, tied directly to the soul and traditions of NASCAR, and it completely disrupts the normal flow of a typical race weekend. So there's a lot to break down here. But before we get into it, if you're a dedicated NASCAR fan like me, the type who never misses a race, follows every driver closely, and truly cares about what's happening in this sport, do me a solid and hit that like button, then subscribe if you haven't already. You're watching NASCAR Nation Report, a brand new channel built specifically for real, passionate fans. We're working hard to reach 15,000 subscribers with people who live and breathe this sport every single week. Alright, let's dive right into the first story because this one carries some serious weight. It all unfolded at Martinsville Speedway. And if you know anything about Martinsville, you already understand the kind of racing we're dealing with: incredibly tight corners, short track tempers running high, and absolutely no room for mistakes, especially as the race winds down. That's precisely where the drama erupted. We're talking about the clash between Bubba Wallace and Carson Hocevar on lap 324. This was late in the race when every single position matters more than ever and drivers are pushing right to the absolute limit. Just moments earlier, Hocevar had forced Wallace 3 wide into turn 1 on a restart, and you could feel the tension beginning to rise. That kind of bold move at a place like Martinsville doesn't always go down smoothly. Then came the decisive moment in turn 3. Wallace made contact with Hocevar, and this wasn't a gentle nudge or ordinary short-track rubbing. He made first contact heading into the corner, followed by a much harder second hit right in the middle of it. That second impact is what changed everything. Hocevar got spun around, and suddenly the front stretch turned into complete mayhem with a huge multi-car wreck. It was the sort of pileup that instantly flips the entire race outcome for multiple drivers, not just the two involved directly. It was clear right away that this wasn't going to be dismissed as just another routine racing incident. The backlash came fast and loud. Seven-time champion Richard Petty spoke about it on his Petty Race Recap podcast with Dale Inman, and that's when the conversation turned brutally straightforward. When Inman tried to describe the move by saying Wallace kind of got into the 77 car, Petty immediately pushed back. He made it crystal clear that, in his view, this wasn't a minor tap or something that could easily be seen as accidental. He said Wallace drove in there and basically knocked the door off Hocevar. And when you go back and review the replay, it's easy to understand why he saw it that way. It looked aggressive. It looked like a move that stepped over the line. But then you hear Bubba Wallace's side of the story and things get more complicated. He spoke with Jamie Little shortly after the incident and took ownership of what happened. He admitted he misjudged the situation. He mentioned that he didn't like the 3-wide move into turn 1 earlier, but he insisted he was not intentionally trying to wreck Hocevar. According to Bubba, he simply got the center of the corner wrong, and at Martinsville, that kind of miscalculation is all it takes for things to go sideways fast. The issue is, this wasn't a small, harmless error with no consequences. This mistake came with a steep cost. Wallace ended up finishing the race in 36th position after starting the day ranked 3rd in the points standings. Let that really sink in. From 3rd place all the way down to now being tied for 8th in a 4-way tie, and when everything is sorted out, he's effectively sitting around 11th in the standings. That's not a small setback. That's a major blow to his momentum, and his team knows exactly how significant this is. His crew chief, Freddie Kraft, was completely honest when he joined the Door Bumper Clear podcast. He said there's no way to sugarcoat it. If Bubba says he misjudged it, then they're standing by his word. But it was a very poor misjudgment. And the main point he stressed is that these kinds of moments simply cannot happen if you want to be considered a real championship contender. Not occasionally, not sometimes, they cannot happen at all. Because when you're in the hunt for a title, every single point is incredibly valuable. And dropping that many points in one afternoon due to your own mistake is exactly how championship dreams begin to fall apart. And as a fan, that's what hurts the most. Bubba Wallace had been having a really strong season up to that point. He was showing impressive speed, stringing together solid finishes and carrying himself like a legitimate threat. Then, in one single instant, everything shifted. Now instead of sitting comfortably near the top of the standings, he's suddenly in a battle to work his way back up. Now let's shift to the second major story, and this one feels entirely different, yet it still holds real importance for anyone who follows NASCAR closely. If you were hopping to watch a NASCAR Cup Series race this Sunday, you're out of luck. There is no Cup race scheduled for April 5th, and the reason is straightforward: it's Easter Sunday. This is actually part of a long-standing NASCAR tradition. Across the entire history of the sport, the Cup Series has only competed on Easter Sunday 14 times, and most of those races happened way back in the 1950s through the 1970s. After that, NASCAR mostly moved away from racing on that day. The only real unplanned exception came in 1989 when a snowstorm forced a Richmond race to be rescheduled to Easter Sunday. In more recent times, NASCAR experimented a little by running Easter weekend events with the Bristol Dirt races in 2022 and 2023, followed by Richmond in 2024. But now, moving into 2025 and continuing in 2026, we're going back to the traditional Easter weekend break with no Cup Series race on the schedule. As a fan, it feels a bit unusual but also somewhat refreshing in its own way. That said, NASCAR isn't shutting down completely. Both the NASCAR Truck Series and the NASCAR Xfinity Series are racing this weekend at the historic Rockingham Speedway, a track that fans have been eager to welcome back to the schedule. The Truck Series will compete in the BLASTS Tire 200 on April 3rd at 4:30 p.m. ET on FS1. Then the Xfinity Series will take the green flag for the North Carolina Education Lottery 250 on April 4th at 2:30 p.m. ET on the CW. Once this short break is over, the Cup Series returns with the Food City 500 at Bristol Motor Speedway on April 12th, right around 3:00 p.m. on FS1. So even though the Cup cars are taking the weekend off, there's still plenty of exciting racing to watch and storylines continuing to unfold. When you look at both of these stories side by side, it creates a fascinating dynamic. On one side, you have this explosive single moment at Martinsville that could have a lasting effect on Bubba Wallace's season. On the other side, you have this uncommon pause in the schedule that gives teams a chance to catch their breath while also giving fans extra time to process everything that happened. For Wallace and his team, this break could turn out to be either a valuable opportunity or a difficult challenge. It provides them with important time to regroup, learn from the error, and arrive at Bristol with a focused mindset. But it also means the incident will remain in the spotlight for longer. Fans and media will continue talking about it, analyzing it, and replaying the moment. By the time they get to Bristol, all eyes will be locked on the number 23 team. And that's exactly where drivers prove who they really are, not when things are going perfectly, but when they have to respond and bounce back after something like this happens. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. I genuinely read every single one. Here's my honest opinion. I understand the aggression. I understand how frustration can build up at a demanding track like Martinsville. It pushes drivers right to the edge and sometimes beyond it. But this particular move crossed the line even if it wasn't completely intentional. Even if it truly was only a misjudgment at this level and at this point in the season, you have to execute better, especially when you're in the fight for a championship. Because this is precisely how seasons can disappear in an instant. What really caught my attention was Freddie Kraft's comments. When your own crew chief is that straightforward and blunt about it, you know it wasn't just another ordinary racing incident. This was a very expensive mistake. At the same time, I actually like the Easter break. It brings a different energy to the calendar, and after such a chaotic race at Martinsville, maybe this little pause was exactly what the sport needed. But make no mistake, when we get to Bristol, the intensity is going to come roaring right back. And I'll be watching Bubba Wallace very closely because how he and his team handle that next race is going to reveal a lot about the direction of their season. We covered everything today. The complete details of the Martinsville incident, the strong reactions from Richard Petty and Dale Inman, Bubba Wallace's explanation to Jamie Little, the significant points loss, Freddie Kraft's direct comments, plus all the information about the Easter break, the racing action at Rockingham, and the Cup Series return at Bristol. That's the full picture, and now it all depends on what happens moving forward. So if you enjoy straightforward, honest NASCAR talk and genuine fan perspectives, go ahead and subscribe. This season is still young and things can change in the blink of an eye.